Hello, and welcome to the second Sikha of Vaeschanan Chelik Yudalid. It is a deep Sikha, it's a hard Sikha. It's it feels fragmented, at least at first glance. Obviously, the more deep you go into it, it's obviously one theme, but it's quite a Sikha to take in. And bite size, at least for me, was the way to take it in. So that's what we'll do. We'll just go section by section, trying to understand what the Rebbe is telling us. Interesting, in the original Farbrengen, this is not a Vaeschanan Sikha, it's a Yutes Kislev Sikha, Tavshin Chav Daled, 1964, 63, end of 63, and the Rebbe would make a Siyum Hashas on Yutes Kislev, so this is a Siyum Hashas, also connected to the Parsha of Vaeschanan because it talks about Shma Yisrael. So like the first half of the Sikha is really a Shma Yisrael Sikha, and the second half of the Sikha, on the most part, is a Siyum. It's a conclusion on Maseches Nida, the final Masechta in Shas. Now in the unedited version, there is a lot of things that for some reason didn't make it into the final version. You can find it in Teres Menachem, volume 38, page 280. We'll try to incorporate a big of it. The Rebbe started off the Sikha, by the way, saying that we just spoke about Pada B'Shalom, that you should be released B'Shalom. So the Rebbe says, in order to make sure that I'm B'Shalom with everybody, and of course everyone's happy with me, I won't make a very long hadron, but it's quite a full hadron, so I'm not sure how long it actually took at the time, but it's a full hadron. So let's start. There's two main mitzvahs in the Parsha. Mitzvahs Kriya Shma, Shma Yisrael, and mitzvahs Talmud Torah. And they're both said in the same pasuk. And yet, Kriya Shma you say twice a day, and learning is constantly, all the time. You have one constant learning. So much so, you make a bracha once a day, and that bracha lasts. Unlike Kriya Shma, that you make a bracha each Kriya Shma. Before, in the morning, you do the bracha Yetzar Ma'eres and Avos Olam, and in Ma'ariv you do Ma'ariv Haravim and Oyev Am Yisrael. So it's different. One is constant and one is fragmented. In other words, one in the morning, one in the night. And the Rebbe says, L'chayra, seemingly Ipcha Mistaber, it follows the natural logic. Why? Because Torah is something that is based on understanding. If you don't know what you're learning in Torah Shabbal Peh, Torah Shabbal Ksav, it's okay. Even if you read it, you're Yetzah. The Torah Shabbal Peh, you didn't do the mitzvah. The reality is, our head doesn't work the same all day, every day. It's not consistent. Sometimes it works better, sometimes not. Even the Gemara, it says that when you learn by day, Shmaitze Mechadeton, it makes you sharper. The Gemara says in Erevin, Vaeschanan actually says it in Erevin. So, why is Torah one bracha for the whole day as if it's one constant, and Tefillah is not? Interesting, he brings from the Agada that says from the Yalkut Shemaini that how did Moshe Rabbeinu, when he was 40 days in heaven, know when it's day and when it's night? When Hashem taught him Mikra, Chumash, he knew it was day. When the Eibishter taught him Mishnah, he knew it's night. That means there was difference based on the energy of the time, learned different things. So Rebbe explains it in three levels. Ois Beis is level 1, Gimel is level 2, and Daled is level 3. So let's go level by level. A person's life is split into days. Each day has its own energy. What's a day? 24 hours. Vayi Erev, Vayi Boker Yom Echad. And in here is hinted the tachlis, our purpose in this world. Our job is here to make a dir b'tachtainim, not to negate the world, but rather the world the way it seems to be an independent reality. That's why we say Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, because the famous thing in Chassidus, Echad means one, implying that there might be a two, and Yachid means singular, there is no space for two. So why do we say Hashem Echad? Hashem is one, implying there might be two, because in theory there could be two. The person could see the world as separate. And yet we're saying there's only one Hashem. In other words, we're accepting the fact that at least through the worldly perspective, a person might not see Hashem. and think that there's a separation. And echad means that there's only one. So what is the avodah of Kriya Shema? What's the calling of Kriya Shema? The calling of Kriya Shema is to amlichte, to crown Hashem as the king of the whole world, to reveal it within this world. So that's why Kriya Shema is said once in the morning and once at night for the two different energies, not to focus on the fact that they're different, but rather to go into each one, both day and both night, and combine them into one, echad, one day. But Torah, on the other hand, is not something that goes into the world, unlike Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, where we accept the fact, like Ches is the seven heavens and this world, and Dal, it's the four directions, so there's an acceptance of reality. In Torah, it's Hashem's wisdom, even though it was downloaded in a way that we could understand, ultimately it's Hashem's wisdom, and like the Gemara says, that just like fire can never receive tumah, Torah can never receive tumah because it stays godly. It doesn't penetrate into this world and take on at least a fictional perception of this world, versus Shema Yisrael, that we accept that there's this world, at least in our perception, and we bring Avtzon into it. So therefore, there's no day, night, it's all Torah is above it. That's base. In Ois Gimel, point 2, the Rebbe says, we just said that Kriya Shema is there to bring a unity between day and night. It doesn't only mean to reveal in the world that it is one, but actually to accomplish it. In other words, not only to acknowledge and say, by the way, the world is one. Like I'm an outside observer. I'm just telling you, by the way, between me and you should know the world is one. No. It's there to accomplish that it will be one. Like the Chazal say in regards to Kriya Shema, that a person is amlichte, he literally crowns Hashem as the king. You literally crown Hashem as the king, like a mini Rosh Hashanah every single day. So you're working within this world and you're affecting this world. So there's no question that there is different energies and different times of the world. And the truth is, the Rebbe says even davening itself has various different levels. There's Maida'ani, etc., each one with its own level. Now, every level that a person goes up, even though it feels like day, but when you move a few hours later, it feels like night. In other words, what you did last night, your Kriya Shema that you did last night, you feel like, oh wow, I made Hashem the king. I was poil, I accomplished. By now, last night was night. In other words, what you accomplished yesterday was night. It's not day. And therefore, there's constantly new things to do and to uplift. But Torah, whose job is not necessarily to create unity within this world, because with Torah, on behalf of Torah, the world doesn't exist. Therefore, there's no climbing from step to step. It's one consistent energy. Okay. Second, there's just so much material in the unedited version beyond the edited version. It's unbelievable. Like the Rebbe talks about having a night, then a day, that when you're at night, knowing that there'll be a day in the morning gives you a desire to get out of night. And that gives you an energy to break out of the night and come into Kriya Shema b'Shachar. So by the way, Mishnayos, it's interesting, this is a Siyum on Mishnayos, on Shas, but what's the first Mishnah? Shachris, so it's a connection to the beginning, the first Mishnah. Shema, when do you call Shema? Ba'arvis, in night. That's the first Mishnah. When do you reach Shema at night? Because first is the night, and the desire is that you know that the day is coming next and you're going to bring more energy. So we're constantly growing higher and higher in our levels. Versus Torah, that's 2,000 years older than the world. In other words, it's Chlal here before the world was created, has no consideration of the world, and it's a much higher level. Okay. Says the Rebbe in Ois Dalid, in number 4, which is another difference, because Kriya Shema. We just said, not only does it acknowledge that the world doesn't exist compared to Hashem, and not only does it accomplish it, but because you're accomplishing it and you're doing the Avodah, you yourself can't be the same headspace every single moment of the day. Sometimes you are day, sometimes you're night. Sheva Yipot Tzadik become a person falls down 7 times and rises. But the point is, don't be in a spell. Don't get overwhelmed with that, and do your work. Whether it's day in your life, you're in a good headspace. Whether it's night in your life, you're not exactly in the best headspace. Do the avodah. But Torah, which is above avodah, there's no difference. But nor that somebody should be able to say Kriya Shema by night. In other words, even when they're in the night of their lives, they're not exactly at the greatest level. A person needs koyach from Hashem. And that is Torah within Kriya Shema. That's why the Torah, Vaeschanan levanecha v'dibarta bam, which talks about Torah, is brought within Kriya Shema, because Kriya Shema, now that even though it's just a mitzvah, it has the milah, it has the thing that Torah has, which is above the world, and that gives you strength that even when you're in the world and you're being affected by the energies of the world, you could still stay above. So that was the Kriya Shema Torah thing, on the most part. Section 5, the Rebbe starts talking about the end of Shas, Maranida. The beginning of Shas, as we just said a moment ago, when do you read Shma? At night. The end of Shas is Tanad Veliyo, they learned in the Yeshiva Veliyo that whoever learns halachas every single day is promised days of Ben Elam Haba, because the pasuk says halichos olam lay. And we don't read the word halichos or halachos. So if somebody has halachos, olam lay, the world is his, the olam haba is his. Now, what's the connection between Kriya Shema at night, which is the beginning of Shas, and halachos? Because we just said that the koyach for Kriya Shema to be above this world comes from Torah, from learning Torah every single day, that you're above this world, and then you can work within this world even though you're affected by this world. And why dafka halachas? Because in Torah there's various elements, and if you go into Gemara, there's a lot of shakal v'tayr, there's a lot of discussion. It's not so straightforward, it's not so cut forward, it's not so unified. There's diversity. But halacha is one maskana, one bottom line, one psak, no gray areas. And that absoluteness that's above Torah, that's above this world, that's above any chiluk, it's pure actus, pure unity, gives you the strength in your Kriya Shema. Now the Rebbe goes on the next level. The final sugya we just said, the final part of the Gemara, we connected to the first part. Now we're going to connect the final part of the Gemara to the part just before it. The part just before it is a Gemara Nida. It talks about a woman, and it talks about a Zava and a Nida, just a bit of background. Today, Zava and Nida is all combined into one. And when a woman has Dam Nida, she has the blood of Nida, she waits till the bleeding stops and then waits a full week, and then she goes to the mikveh. But once upon a time, if you had the blood of Nida, it was a much simpler process. You could just tovel that day. If you had Ziva, on the other hand, which means within the 11 days, 12 days after you had Nida, you had 3 days of bleeding, which is called Zava G'dola. There's a whole level of Zava Ktana. It's the whole Gemara Nida. It's very complicated, but fascinating stuff. If you had that, then you had to wait 7 days and then go to mikveh. So Nida was a much softer level of tumah of impurity, and Ziva was a big deal. Zava was a big deal. Today, the woman eventually took on all the chumras, all the things that within Zava they brought into Nida, so that there should be no gray areas, and every woman now waits 7 days of clean before she goes to mikveh. Okay. So the Gemara over there says, Amalei Rav Shmai Rabbi Lazar. Rabbi Shmai turns to his friend Rabbi Lazar and says, I would say that if a woman sees blood by day, she should be a Zava. And if she sees by night, she should be under the category of Nida, which is lighter. Rashi says, why should she be a Zava if she sees by day? Because the pasuk says, Yamim Rabim. That if a woman saw Yamim Rabim many days, 3 days, then she's a Zava. So why can't we say that it's only days and night you're Nida? And he responds to him and says, Alecha Markara, regarding you, the pasuk says, regarding your question, it says Al Nidasa. The words are Al Nidasa. Al doesn't mean only above, but next to. So even next to Nidasa, that means even the time Close to it, close to the Zava, which is night, will also be Zava. What does Rashi say? Lil Shmini Sharei Yemei Nidus Kol Shiva Adaladik L'Siv Shivas Yom Tim Nidasa. Rashi says that the night of the 8th, after the 7 days, so you see that the fact that the night after the 8th, which is what it talks about in the pasuk, Al Nidas is the night after the 8th, and it's a night, and nevertheless we refer to it as Al Nidasa. So therefore, it must mean that it is the level of Tumah. And the pasuk said the word Zava regarding that. The pasuk said the word Zava, and nevertheless it was by night. Al Nidas, and then the Torah used right away the word Zava. Yamim Rabim Tia B'Zivasa. So therefore you have Zava, a proof that you have Zava at night. Anyway. Now, Tosfos says that the connection between that sugya Nida Zava and the connection to the Kalashan Halachos is just because no connection. We just wanted to finish with a good thing. But the Maharsha says there has to be some kind of connection. Now we could explain according to Chassidus. Chazal tell us in the Gemara, in Eruvin, that the blood of Nida is one of the curses that Chava got from Eitz Hadas, from the tree of knowledge, which means that she developed within her the ability for evil, which expresses through blood, dam tumah, negative. But the Jewish body pushes it outwards. In other words, we don't want that blood is tummy, so we push it out. It doesn't have any space for it. Until the woman is fully cleansed, until they go to the mikveh, they are not at the level of absolute purity, and therefore they're tumah. Now, the difference between a nida and a zava in the times of the Gemara is that Zava, someone who sees blood for 3 days within the 11 days between Nida and Nida, she does not only go to mikveh, she has to count 7 days. And the Nida doesn't. Why? The Zava needs 7 days because it is extra blood. It's more. It's more than usual. In other words, each person has a bit of that. But then there's sometimes that there's a lot of that. So everyone has Zuma, every Yid has a bit of darkness. The evil that came from Chet Etzadas, men, women, we all have that, and we have to push it away. But the level of Beinani, which Tanya encourages us to be, which is that the Yetzer Hara is still there. It just, we don't let it win. But it's constantly waking up. That is the darkness, that's the nida. And that you could get pure relatively easy. But if you got into a real hole, you've gone down the rabbit hole, you're not a Beinani that just happens to have a voice inside, but, we fall. And now it's a real impurity. And they see blood much more. Too much. And therefore, you can't just push it out easily. You need 7 days. You have to be clean. In other words, you have to go to the absolute extreme. Like the Rambam says, and we learned it recently in the Rambam, the daily Rambam of the Rebbe, that if you went from one extreme, if you naturally one extreme, you don't go to the middle, you go to the other extremes. You go 7 days, absolute cleanliness, and then you find back. Why 7? Because 7 is a full universe, it's a full hekef, and when you do the avodah of each of the 7 days in the pure way, in the ultimate way, you're purified. So that's the connection between Zava and Nida to the final question, to the final thing of Kalasha and Halachos. Why? Because the Gemara's question was, ultimately, the Nida is regular blood. The Zava is extras. So the Gemara comes and asks a question, by day, if a person, when Hashem's light is shining, it's a beautiful day, it's the time of the day of Am Yisrael, you sin, and you fall into a rut, you should be a Zava. But at night, Hashem is hidden. Give the person some grace, so they fell, but Hashem is hidden. So call them a Nida, not a Zava. But the answer is it's still a Zava. Why? Because every year, no matter how dark it is, we have the ability to serve Hashem, that we shouldn't be a level of Zava, we shouldn't be reaching that level of impurity, even if it's night. And where does that koyach come from? Torah. That goes back to the beginning of the sikha, that you're above differences and you're powerful. And that's called Hashem halachas pal yom miftach, that when you learn halacha, specifically that part of Torah that we explained earlier, that's above any division, absolute unity, that brings the person, the koyach, to not fall down and at night and go into the level of zava. And Tosfos says that we finish with these words, because like the Nevi'im would always finish their words, the prophets always finish their words with comfort. This word is also comfort, to remind every single person that Torah gives you the koyach to rise up. And you could reach Olam Haba, Alichas Olam, where you could achieve the greatest level